All right, thank you for attending. We really appreciate everybody here. I know a few of you have attended 2 or 3 of these meetings, so we appreciate your lovely faces again. I am Jenny Rowan. I'm the Community Development Director. To my right is Andrew. He's our Long Range Planner. And to my left is Marcy. She's our Community Development Engineer. We have Jay in the back. He will be helping. He's our newest planner. And then we also have lovely Lisa walking around. So I'll go through our presentation. We have a short presentation. Some of y'all have heard this before. And then afterwards, we will be going through each character district by character district, getting your input on things that are important in those areas, potential or possible heights, any changes with that, any changes with setbacks. All right, so we are here to talk about Johns Pass Village district zoning. And this is the last of our public workshops for this round. So a little bit about local land regulations and what we look at when we're looking at your land or a piece of property and seeing what you can build on it. So there are three different plans that we're really looking at. So at the county level, with Fort Pinellas, there's a countywide plan. So in that they have rules, strategies, and then they have a corresponding map. So each parcel of land has a designation at the county level. And in those countywide rules, you really have your allowed uses, your intensity, so like how big your building can be, and then density, how many units per acre for residential and hotel use. And then you also have ISR, your impervious surface ratio. And then going down from there, locally we have 2 different plans. So we have with our comprehensive plan, and what we're focusing on in our comprehensive plan is the land use element. Looks very similar to the county's rules. So you have your uses, allowed uses, your intensity, density, impervious surface ratio. That's really the bare bones. And then going down from that, we have the Madeira Beach Code of Ordinances. In there, we have a section that's the Land Development Regulations. You'll hear me refer to this as LDRs, which encompasses all of our zoning. So you'll have a zoning district for your map, for your parcel as well. So you have 3 different designations, one at the county level, one at the comprehensive plan level, that's called the future land use, and then we have zoning here at the bottom. And so today we're really talking about the zoning in Johns Pass Village. And with the zoning, it'll reflect the countywide plan, the comprehensive plan, so you'll have your intensity, density, your uses, but it breaks down your uses into primary uses, accessory uses, special exception uses, and then in the zoning, you have your setbacks, your heights, all the nitty-gritty of what you can do with your property. So this is what those 3 maps look like. So here on the left side, we have the countywide plan map. And the area that we're talking about today is the Johns Pass Village Activity Center. So that's everything in this darker blue. And then you can see here, the bottom right is with our comprehensive plan, our local comprehensive plan. Yeah, they look very similar. We have the activity center land use that's in purple, the same footprint. And now we're looking to our zoning map. And as you can see, there's multiple different zones in that activity center area. So a little bit of the history here. Between 1940s and 80s, many of those buildings in that Johns Pass Village area were built. In 83, there's a creation of the modern Madeira Beach zoning, which includes the uses, the heights, and the setback. Many of these did not reflect what was actually built on the ground. And then in 2007 and 8, there were amendments passed to the comprehensive plan and then the land development regulations, which exceeded those countywide plan maximums. And to go back to those 3 different plans, they all have to correspond with each other. We cannot have something locally that exceeds the maximums of the county. We can be more restrictive, but we can't be less restrictive. And then in 2020 to 2022, current staff found these inconsistencies and then proceeded with public meetings on how we rectify this, the public feels about this, and then also working with Fort Pinellas, so the county, on possible ways how to proceed. So between 22 and 24, the Johns Pass Village Activity Center was created and adopted at the county and the local level in the comprehensive plan. And since that is adopted, we are required to look at our zoning and have corresponding zoning. So why an activity center in that Johns Pass Village area? So it's really to protect the unique character of the village, to assure that we have compatible redevelopment. We must be consistent with the countywide plan, and it's really a proactive instead of reactive approach in planning. Now going back to the land development regulations, or LDRs. So looking at zoning, I kind of touched on this earlier, but it says your uses, so we'll have your primary use, your accessory use, and your special exception. If you have a special exception use, that means it has to go to the special magistrate as an allowed use. And then in the zoning, you'll also see setbacks that are from the property lines, and building height, which is measured from design flood elevation. We'll be going over in the next few slides. And then also something that we see in zoning are special requirements. So there might be extra landscape requirements in certain zonings with certain uses. There may be an additional setback if, say, you're a hotel and you're next to a single-family duplex or triplex. Things of that nature we'll see in the special requirements. All right, I'll turn it over to Marcy.
So as Jenny previously mentioned, our building heights are measured from the design flood elevation. The entirety of Madeira Beach is in a special flood hazard area, so the entire community has base flood elevations that are mapped on FEMA maps. For instance, Johns Pass Village in that area, you'll typically find will be a base flood elevation of 10, 11, or 12 as you get into the velocity zones. So that is your base flood elevation based on your address. After that, Madeira Beach, or all flood hazard communities, have a freeboard. Madeira Beach's freeboard is 4 feet. So when you have a base flood elevation of 11 feet, we add 4 feet to that, and your design flood elevation then becomes 15 feet. So you have your base elevation plus your freeboard gets you your design flood elevation. The design flood elevation dictates where the first elevated floor has to fall. So if you are in a coastal A or velocity zone, your first elevated structural member has to be at that design flood elevation or higher. If you're outside of a coastal A or V zone, simply your finished floor will have to be at that elevation. We'll have some drawings later and kind of discuss that a little more with some visuals. But we do have a building here where we have shown kind of how we measure the height and the elevation that it starts from. And remember, the design flood elevations are elevations. You can be standing on the ground and be at an elevation of 5, not 0. So that's something to keep in mind as we discuss height and how we measure it. What we found too is historically you'll notice older buildings when you walk in, the ceiling is lower. Newer buildings have higher ceilings. So the average story we're finding is between 11 and 14 feet. That'll typically be measured from the floor that you walk in on. And let's say you have a 10-foot high ceiling, then maybe the foot and a half above that is where your structural joists are, also where your ductwork can be running. It's where your plumbing can be, your lighting can be. So that's why you end up with stories that are 11 to 14 feet. Also, we have setbacks. So we talked a little bit about heights and building setbacks. We measure the building setback from the property line to the exterior most outer edge of the structural member along the at-grade structure. So no portion of the building when it's constructed can be within that setback. So we have side yard, front yard, and rear yard setbacks. And depending on your zones, they will vary. So that would be some of the things we'll be talking to you guys about today. Setbacks in the village, along the boardwalk, commercial core, what makes sense in those areas. So the setbacks are primarily measured when you're at grade, again, to the outermost structural member. As you get to the second floor, our code, as well as many other codes, have caveats for what patios can do. Patios can, for example, cantilever 4 feet in to a required setback. So as you go higher, there's a little bit of a difference there, and we'll have the opportunity to discuss those as well today when we discuss the setbacks. Some people like that the buildings become more set back the higher they get, so that it doesn't seem like a full wall. So that's where your setbacks come into play and why they're important for this discussion.
All right. So we discussed a little earlier. We have our existing zoning map here on the left side. And then this is based off of the special area plan and the Johns Pass Village Activity Center. So obviously we know that things on 133rd look very different than things on Boardwalk, which looks very different than things on Village Boulevard. So the activity center, or this area, is broken up into 6 different districts. So we'll be going through each of these districts. We'll be asking you we'll only be talking district by district. We'll be talking about heights, setbacks, and then any special requirements or things that maybe you talk about at your tables that are important that should be kept, like design guidelines or standards in certain areas. So we'll be starting with the Boardwalk district. So the existing zoning is C2. The setbacks, the front is from Boardwalk Place, so right here, not along the boardwalk. So the front is 20 feet. This is from your property line. Side is 5 foot on one side, and then the rear or waterfront is none, so right against that actual boardwalk. And the height from design flood elevation is 34 feet. So here we just plucked out one of the properties within this district and imposed those setbacks and the height. So you can see here, 34 feet measured from, it's easy to imagine the DFE as like the second floor, because it is kind of hard to imagine in your mind when you're looking at height. So you can see here, 34 feet is from that second floor upward to the roof. And we have 20 feet, which is along Boardwalk Place, and then 5 feet on one side. And just an example of a building that is in the Boardwalk district. And as we can see here, here's the base flood elevation at 11. Design flood elevation is at 15. So that's where we're starting to measure height. And so from there to the roof is 37 feet and ½ inch. And some pictures of Boardwalk Character District. Okay, so we will give you 10 minutes, and we have to be strict about the time. So I know some of our other, actually all of our other workshops, we kind of went over time, so we'll give you 10 minutes. So discuss amongst yourselves in your groups, and then we'll come along and each group will have one person to say what your table discussed, what you think the appropriate height, appropriate setbacks, and then any other special requirements. All right, and I'll start the timer. And we'll just be walking around, so grab us if you have any questions.
Hello? Okay. Hey, for the boardwalk area, currently restaurants have serving space down on the seafloor area, basically. I don't know what else to call that, but right down on the ground level. That's not going to change with this, right? Would they still be able to have their serving space down on that ground level? Because the images show it has to start you put the boardwalk in a picture, but it doesn't show that they could serve down on the ground. Is that still possible?
Commercial structures are allowed to flood-proof. So there's dry flood-proof measures and wet flood-proofing measures. So they are allowed to use the space below for parking or, servicing like you've talked about. So yes, they can.
The second, you showed the picture of the setback, but it was behind the boardwalk. Now, when you were talking about the elevated, so if there's decks, does that go over then, that boardwalk? Is that included?
Our intent would not be to put anything over top of the boardwalk. As it becomes elevated, let's say if it was a story higher, we would not have it come over the boardwalk, no. Correct, yes. It would have, yes. The boardwalk is a bit unique like that. We wouldn't let you go over the boardwalk. We would probably be pretty clear about that in the zoning write-up as far as where yeah.
Setbacks of second floor, third floor, whatever, of cantilevering, patios or outdoor seating areas, something like that. If y'all want to discuss that, that's something that we can definitely write in there, so.
So that's what you talked about in the actual building that you would look at. It would actually step back. So you may not have one.
There's a spot at that table in the front. Sure. I'll put a worksheet up there for you. Which one? The lady in the blue shirt? Yeah. Okay, yep. Oh, I know. Because we have to.
I have one grounds maintenance position.
So that's just kind of what it sounds like.
Yep, parks, I mean, basically all my staff, except for sanitation, do everything.
Jim.
But yeah, this one would be, I'm trying to do some serious stormwater stuff, but we are, because I'm so short-staffed, we are constantly in the parks.
What will be the qualifications?
They just have to meet the requirements. Basically, can do physical labor, work outside, run equipment.
I'm trying to nudge my girlfriend into
His girlfriend's looking for
considering.
I actually have a guy that I think as long as he follows through, or he passes everything, he's supposed to be getting an offer letter.
Okay.
Does James still work here? What happened to him?
He did not like authority. He spent way too much time in Archibald, not doing anything, actually. I'm not quite sure what to do at Archibald. Yeah, he'd be up on the patio that's not ours, deck.
I know it's a new guy there. Jamie.
This guy. No. I had a guy who I interviewed who has lots of experience, but he doesn't pass background, physical, drug test.
Well, let me know if something else opens up. My girlfriend's she likes it.
There's a worksheet right there for you.
She does.
There's a pen for you. There's pizza and coffee over there.
But yeah, she can't work inside. It's like her biggest
Okay, we have a minute and a half. All right, and time is up. Okay. So choose a person at your table to talk for the table. And then we'll go around table to table. You want to start over here? All right.
Yes. Oh my God. Okay. So we would like to keep the building heights to their current height. On the front side, make sure that we have pedestrian friendly because we have the roadway in there now and it's not pedestrian friendly. The pedestrians have to walk in the road. And then on the architectural aspects to make it or keep it aesthetically pleasing. The side setback only on the contiguous structure on the ends. Not have it in between buildings. That makes no sense at all. And that's all we have.
And for the height, is it keeping it current code? Okay. Okay. Just want to make sure. Okay. All right. Next table.
All right, I'll speak for this table here. What we're looking at those pictures as well, we think, and Guy and I actually own the property on the boardwalk, so we're looking at it from a couple different perspectives. Number one, there should not be any setback in between buildings to keep that walkability along the boardwalk. 0 sides at all. From a rear perspective, it should be 0 because you should go right up to the boardwalk on that one as well. And then I think similar to what you're talking about, the other table is the front, just enough for a nice sidewalk to walk by. And so it's a 5 off the front.
Okay.
So 5 foot off the front, 0, 0, 0. And then from a height perspective, we don't think, from a character perspective, nothing should ever be able to be higher than what's there right now on that. So I don't know exactly what the current code is. Is that as high as the
So the
Hooters
hi-
restaurant there? So they have a layer of
Yeah. I think
restaurants and then that.
the
Shouldn't
highest
be any
one
higher
that
than that.
we've found. So a lot of these buildings, just in general,
Yep.
a lot of buildings in this area, not just Boardwalk, but in the Johns Pass Village area, they were built before the
Right.
current zoning codes. We don't have building plans of everything, so we've plucked out some from each district,
Yep.
just showing the height. So this is the highest one that we have found.
We agree with nothing higher than that
Than that
37 feet.
37.
Yep. So that's our vote from this
All
table.
right.
Who's going to speak at this table?
No, no,
With the height, we believe it should be where the current one is, so 37.05 inches
Okay.
for height. For the rear setback, we'd like to leave it at none, and not because we were arguing, but because we just didn't get that far in our discussion. We don't have a consensus on front and side. We only had the rear.
Okay.
Sorry, that's where we are.
That's okay.
Who's going to speak?
All right, last table.
Okay. For the proposed side setback, we agree that it should be able to be contiguous, all right, so 0. And then for the proposed rear setback, 0, right up to the boardwalk. And then it's difficult for us to identify the front because we don't know the dimension of the road. We know that there needs to be a 5-foot sidewalk. That's a really key thing. You need to be able to have a
Okay.
5-foot sidewalk. But outside of that, how far do you bring that property back? Because if you take 20 feet from there, there's no space to put anything. So
Yeah.
it's got to be realistic. The other thing is when you look at floors above the first floor, you shouldn't be able to overhang the boardwalk. And we're currently debating, we haven't come up with an idea, can you overhang over all the way up to the maximum extent of the property on the second floor, coming towards, is that the front? Is the street side? Is
Front's the
front.
street side, yeah.
So, additional balconies, that's what we were debating, but we haven't got through it. Over the boardwalk, no.
Okay.
Over the boardwalk, no.
None of it's boardwalk.
No. On the other side, the other side.
Oh, and then height. Existing code or existing building? Code 34, okay.
Building, sorry,
Oh,
building.
building, okay. Yeah, so 37. All right. Okay, moving along. Now we're going to go over to the commercial core. So the commercial core currently has an existing zoning of C1. The setbacks in height are a little different. So setbacks from the front, none. The side is 10 feet on one side. The rear is 25 feet. The height from design flood elevation is 34 feet. So just an example of, we plucked a few different, because we do have some larger properties there, but then there's also smaller properties. So we just have examples of both of them. And keep in mind that commercial can flood-proof the ground floor, so that's different than residential. Say hotels, like you can't have units on the ground floor, but commercial can flood-proof the ground floor. But we still measure from that design flood elevation, which is going to be around the second floor. And just some examples there of the setbacks and the heights. And then an example of the highest building there. So grabbing your design flood elevation to the very top of the roof is 55 feet, 6.5 inches. And then some pictures of buildings that are in that district. All right, and I'm going to start the timer, so I'll give you 10 minutes.
And this picture has a good example of how the building is set back, but then above, the patio and walkway comes out over.
And then on the bottom right is another example of where you do have a setback of the second and third floors, so that's also something that could be written into the zoning codes, just to keep in mind. All right, and my timer just went off. So, are any of the tables ready to talk about heights and setbacks? All of you are? Okay. Who wants to start?
There we go. All right. Yeah, all right. So we're looking at this one. It's a complex one to look at if you think about it, because there's so many different intricacies with the boardwalk, with the alley, with all those different aspects running through. So looking at it the way we've been slicing and dicing this thing is, even though they're large parcels, there are a bunch of individual lots right in there. So if we were just saying if we owned one of those lots each, how would they have to be treated, right? Because that's what you have to look at, it, individual property rights. So what we looked at is, because you have Boardwalk Place running along the boardwalk, and then you have 129th, we kind of treat those as the fronts, right, all the way down. And then we treat the alley as the rear. That setbacks is kind of where we're going from on our thing here. So because there's, if you just talk about Boardwalk Place first, there's already a nice sidewalk there. It's about, 18 feet, whatever it is, already there. So what we were talking about is if you did build something on there, there could be a 10-foot setback for the first floor, but allow it to overhang completely to the property line, kind of like that throw before. Because if you guys think about John's Pass, everybody walks in to go shopping on that one side that's covered, right? Nobody's on the other side because it's hotter than crap. realistically, right? But everybody likes where that's covered. So we're talking about, why don't we able to go all the way to the property line on the second floor over? Because who cares, right? If you're covered, the first floor creates some balconies, some little bistro type seating right there. So that's what we're talking about from the front, would be 10 just for the first floor, and allow to go to 0 basically above that. Side setback 0 on all these lots here because they're narrow. And then the rears, because they back up to the alley that's got a curb, 0, because it's not needed. There's going to be parking. We'll have another workshop, I'm sure, about getting more parking into the pass one day. But it shouldn't be the burden on that property owner because it's not enough to support anything that gets built there anyway. So summary is 0 sides, 0 rear, and then 10 on the front with the overhang to the property line, everything above that. And from a height perspective, we're looking from cohesiveness. You can't go any higher than anything that's already there, right? That's the consensus over here. And I guess that would be the other picture you showed a minute ago. That.
So
And so
55.
Yeah, can't go over that peak. So that's our recommendation. We think that would look cohesive, would fit in with the character, and create some good opportunities for the village.
All right.
Do you guys have any other?
Really, really have to stress the importance of parking. So that has to be added there. All caps,
Yes, all
thank you.
caps. All caps and bold. But that table had the same comments, similar comments?
Well,
Do you have any differences? Okay.
And any floor, yeah, the proposed front setback needs at least a 10-foot sidewalk, and then whatever happens up to that, you know.
Okay.
But the second floor up shouldn't go all the way across. We were talking half the distance, 5 foot. If it's a patio, something like that, a 5-foot overhang.
Okay.
And I think everything, zero
It's nice though.
zero
The
side
comment
unless
about-
it's owned by a different
the
company,
comment about
whatever.
Having no setback provides shade for people to
Yeah.
show. And that's a nice feature.
it shade.
You need shade. Yeah. It's a really nice
10-foot
feature
sidewalk.
to build in some shade.
Yeah.
And it's better for builders because they get more space.
Okay.
And then height was no higher than.
Oh, height was the current building? Okay.
I think ours mirrors what that table came up with. The front setback you said was 10, right? First floor, all the way to the lines for shade for the second. We did say we liked the side setback maybe on the end, the street side only, but I don't know if that works in this area like it did in the other district. In the rear, 0, and then we would like to maintain the current existing at 55 feet, 6.5 inches for height.
Okay. No matter what size of the lot? I know y'all were talking
We
about
talked
that.
about it, but we didn't really get a 100% consensus.
Okay.
That would be 55 feet, a discussion. I'm not going to say that was our
Yeah, yeah.
consensus. Was that
But y'all were discussing
55
it.
feet, 6.5 inches would be if you have an acre of land or more. Then for half an acre, down to the 44, and then less than half an acre would be
The 34.
the 34. But again, we didn't reach consensus on that. That was
Okay,
just part of the
okay.
discussion.
For the front, you agreed with the 10-foot setback on first floor and then 0 second and up?
Okay.
We're going to be easy with this. We agree with Jeff on everything he said with this. It fits.
One thing on that. What did you want to change? We have an existing roof now that doesn't come out all the way. So if we add on to the curb. If we add on to the curb, how are we going to finish that? Because now you have a look of straightness and then you have the roof. Yes. So we have to think about, I love what you said. It's the next step. Aesthetically, So if we're going to do that or put that into whatever, we want to try to finish the roof aesthetically so it makes sense. Not just have a bungalow and then a roof, and it's like Tom did this and Jerry did that. We don't. And if there are any kind of dormers or fake dormers to break up that roof line aesthetically, should be added.
Design guidelines.
You know what I'm-
I like what Mr. Tagliarini says about a half acre and three-quarter acre or whatever. But when you build on it, they should be all unique. So if the lot is smaller, or the acreage is smaller, or the point small, and the person or the builder or the owner wants to build at that height to be unique with the rest of them, they should be unique with the rest of them regardless of what size lot you have. Because you don't want to go up and down. It's, if you want to keep something, you're going to keep something straight, nice, and unique. Because if you change the up and down because of acreage, and then it's not a more John's Pass, we have to keep the same level, and people will like that. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, yeah. Okay. Moving along. We're going to go across Gulf Boulevard to John's Pass Resort. So currently this is the R3 zoning category. You'll see this all up and down Gulf Boulevard on the west side, so the beach side. The front varies on your use. So if you're single family, duplex, triplex, your front setback is 20 feet. If you're multifamily, hotel, commercial, it's 25 feet. And then the side depends on your use and then how wide your lot is. So if you're a single family, duplex, triplex, you're less than 50 feet wide, then your setbacks are 5 feet on both sides, so 5 feet and 5 feet. If you're single family, duplex, triplex, and your lot is 50 feet or wider, then you will have 10 feet, so 10 feet and 10 feet on your sides. That goes also with any multifamily, hotel, or commercial. And then your rear setback, if you're along the beach, if your property goes along the beach, it'll be the CCCL, which I'll show you in the next slide. And if you're not along the beach, then it's 25 feet from the property line. Your height from DFE is 44 feet. And then here's one of the special requirements I was talking about before. If you're a hotel or multifamily, which abuts a residential use, then there's an additional 5-foot setback. So what that could look like, as you can see here, is the CCCL. That lime green line right here. So if you're on the beach, that is your setback in the rear. And then we have two different examples on a larger lot. We do have large lots and then we have smaller lots in this area. So this is one of the larger lots. Here's 44 feet. And then depending on how tall your stories are, that could be somewhere between 3 to 4 stories. So we kind of just give you an idea of what that could look like. And then here on the bottom, it's 15 feet and 15 feet because that additional 5 feet, see if there's residential on both sides. And then up here is just that 10-foot setback. So it looks a little different. And an example, I believe this is Beach Place. And here's the DFE, the design flood elevation, that green line. So measuring there from to the roof is 50 feet and 8 inches, 8¼ inches. And there are some things that can exceed that height, just such as mechanical units. So that's not measured in the height. And then looking at one of the smaller lots down here, because we do have smaller lots in this district, you have similar setbacks to the bigger lots. So what that looks like, kind of have a tall, skinny building here. And just some examples of what's built already in that district. So you have a variety of larger condo buildings, and then you do have your smaller buildings, commercial, smaller, also single-family duplex and triplexes. So really keep that in mind when you're talking about your setbacks, your heights, that there is a variety of uses and a variety of lot sizes there. All right, and I will start the timer.
Could I just say one statement about this? So this past week, I did do some. I looked at some of the older zoning ordinances, and a lot of these older condo buildings that were built in the 70s and early 80s. The reason why they're 5 stories over parking, the R3 zoning district used to allow for 60 feet from grade. Which back then equaled about 5 stories over parking. The height was reduced to I think 40 feet from grade, over 3 stories over parking back then, and then basically anything taller than that in the R3s like that were built and was either done either via variance or rezoning to a PD. So just kind of any of the buildings that are about 5 stories. They also had like lot size or lot width requirements where like you had to have a certain lot to get up to 60 feet from grade. So that's why like a lot of those are on pretty large lots, is because you needed to get a certain amount of land to get up to that height back then before it was reduced. But just a little context of why it's like that.
No, just John's Pass. There will be other districts that are R3, but yeah, we're just looking at John's Pass. All right, I'm starting the timer now.
I looked at the old master plan.
Okay, and the timer just went off. Are we all ready? I know that table needed a little bit more time. Is there a table that's ready with their, start here then, okay.
All right, this one's easy because we see no problems with what's there at all. As long as I think the consistency is keep it nothing higher than the current buildings that are there right now, which is that 50 foot, and the fronts, rears, and sides work. So that's the way we look at that Johns Pass Resort District is it's fine at the highest level. Yeah.
Okay, we would like to keep everything where it is, including the current height under code at the 44.
44,
And all of your setbacks, we're good with.
the same, okay. Give it to you, Marcia. Okay,
So we agreed with what Jeff said. The only thing that we wanted to add was based on lot size. We don't want, small lot going 5 feet up. So do you do it by
we
size?
can do by lot size. We do have currently, if you look at the slide, it's based on the width in this district. So we could do something like if you're 50 feet, then kind of have that with the height as well. So we're going to do, that table was current building height. Yes. Setbacks were this, and then do like a little asterisk, and then we can do smaller lots would be lower. All right, next table.
With regards to setbacks, we're fine with the current setbacks, but please make considerations and address setbacks for larger and smaller properties. Make those considerations. And it looks like it's somewhat built in, but maybe if
a
it goes farther.
larger
Yeah.
setback for the
Right.
larger lots.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And with regard to the height, the height that's there is fine, but we would like to put a second consideration. Also, either that height or 5 stories over parking, so that we have 2 safeguards, so that we
Okay.
couldn't, a developer couldn't. We were concerned
An
with
additional floor.
adding floors, right? So 5 stories over parking with that height restriction as well. So we have
Okay.
two definitions.
And would you do the height restriction of the building that's there or the code?
The
You're saying
building.
The building, okay,
Yeah.
50, whatever it was. Yeah, okay.
But-
And then current considerations for lot
He's
size.
adding the parking.
Did you put larger setbacks for larger lots? All right.
So when the floor area ratio comes into play, I think everyone needs to understand that. Before, when you had a parking garage, that square footage of the area of the parking garage never counted before, right? It was just a parking garage, and then you counted your floor to area ratio as the amount of air-conditioned square footage you're allowed to have in your building, right? So when this changed, one thing is that they count the garage now as if it were air-conditioned space. So the threat and the fear of everybody overbuilding is really handcuffed badly because of what the county put into this thing. So I don't see there's
It's
not a
only
real risk.
if you use the alternative temporary lodging use standards. But if you use those standards, you get a slightly higher FAR and then slightly higher density. But that's
So
that's
that would
exactly
be
right.
for a building that would, if some, so that's kind of the challenge with zoning. You can have various different scenarios of allowed uses down there. So in a scenario where someone came in and applied or did a development agreement for those alternative temporary lodging use standards, the garage would have to count, and that's based off the language from the county that's more restrictive that we were required to include. If someone was building a residential condominium, the garage wouldn't count towards the FAR. But a residential condominium would be being built at 18 units per acre, so it's less density than so the kind of including the garage kind of restricts the number of hotel rooms you could have. So there's trade-offs with everything. It gets kind of that there's so many different scenarios and stuff, and then even that, like the alternative temporary lodging standards, the FAR. It varies based on lot size too. But we made sure to include very strict language, because the more vague it is, we didn't want wiggle room. We wanted to have language that was very clear what was can and can't be done down there. So, yeah.
Is it possible, just for the sake of ease, because I think you guys just said it, if you did 5 floors over parking, right, and allowed 2 levels of parking. Look at Madeira Bay, for example, right?
Well,
That's 2 floors of parking, and it's got 5 floors of units. It's not ridiculous. It's not crazy. It's not destructive. It's not Clearwater Beach, and it would be something that everyone could agree on, takes ambiguity out of the way. And then you want to have a reasonable ceiling height, but if you have 5 floors over a max of 2 parking, and you've even put on your slides, ceiling heights are 11 to 14 feet, so it can't be any higher than that. And then you have a nice unit that will sell for good money, which matters because that brings in tax dollars to the city, right? And there is a difference between an 11.5-foot ceiling and a 9-foot ceiling from a feeling of a piece of property too. So I think a couple feet here or there doesn't really matter, but I think if you had a 5/2 simple rule, everybody would know what that rule is, and they could play with it, and ambiguity and finger pointing and all the accusations might go away.
I would
Just a
suggest if
thought.
we do this story, also having like a maximum footage, something like
As if
that.
you had nice 12-foot ceilings. Say, okay,
Yeah.
maximum is 5 of those, and then a rooftop and 2 parkings. Just a simple thought,
yeah.
You could say it's too tall, but what's the difference in 6 feet when you're up 44 or you're up 50? Really?
I mean,
Yeah. It's a personal
I
opinion.
mean, one way
I don't
to
see
treat it also
the
is
difference
if
in that.
you can
Look at your building that you're doing, and then go down to the boulevard, and you can see your building that you're doing. Now, just add 20 feet on it, visually, and that's what you're talking about. That's what you want to put there.
Well, one option is you really lock it at the actual 6 stories from grade, and if you do 2 floors of parking, you only get 4 floors of living space. I mean, that's one way to do it. If you really want the hard limit of
Of
to
so
be
many
exactly
stories.
to what currently exists. So that's why it's good to have that language in there to kind of specify like what can and can't be done down there. So yeah. That's 51 feet from DFE, so it's probably 60 feet from grade. That's what was in the code when that was built. Yeah.
Why would we go higher than we need right now? Because if that's the case, everything got wiped out. Everybody can build to that.
I think the challenge is that modern buildings, the floors are probably going to be slightly higher. So like, look at it for this way. The Sereno is a condo building that was built in the 2000s. That was unfortunately done via variance, but it was done that way to basically get back up to the height to build a modern 5 stories over parking condominium. So that they got a variance. I think they did 60 feet from BFE. When I was looking that up. So I think they're like having the hard limits so you don't end up having rooftop things that end up being a 7-story or having 2 floors of parking would then make it a 7-story building. Like lock it just at 6 stories and whatever happens between that, if you want 2 stories of parking and 4 stories of living space, or if you want 5 stories of living space and 1 story of parking, but it just has to be less than that 6 stories and to have that hard limit to, but the floor height thing, like that's why any newer, it's going to come in probably slightly taller. That's kind of the challenge with locking it at that 50 from, you're going to end up with very skinny floors. But if that's what the board want, it's really up to what the community and the board, and if they want the keep the skinnier floors with the, then we'll write it that way. But
I think
just
it's,
to-
I think
to
based on what
clarify.
we got, it's easier to understand feet. You're saying 6 stories, but we're looking at feet. 51
So-
feet
so-
is where it's at right now. So if you're saying 6 stories, 11 feet minimum per story is 66 feet.
No,
14
it'd
is 84 feet.
it'd be 55 feet from DFE. That's how it'd be written in our code.
Okay.
From,
So
Right-
DFE
right
is
now
like
it
the
says 51
second
feet.
floor.
So
from
I think
DFE.
we're debating about from grade or from DFE. And basically on the beach side, you lose the first floor because I mean, it's
For
just
the
going to be
parking.
parking.
This is highest existing building in each district from DFE is 50 feet, 8.25 inches.
And that's what exists
And that's what's on
there.
the screen
And then
right
it's
now
it
as
was
an
built 60
example.
feet from grade, but back then we didn't have those freeboard requirements. So what I'm saying is if you built this if this had to get demolished and you had to rebuild it, it's the first floor is going to be taller because of our 4 feet of freeboard, and the base flood elevation is probably higher now. And then each floor is going to probably be taller, so you're going to end up, just because of the different requirements of it, you're going to end up with a taller building. It'd still be 5 stories over parking or 6 stories from grade, but it wouldn't be a 1-to-1 carbon copy of that. But if you guys want the narrower floors, we could leave that in. If you want the hard limit of 50 feet from DFE, match that 1-to-1. Besides having the higher, because the 4 feet of freeboard and the base flood elevation might be different now. We could write it that way, but
Yes.
Yeah.
Typically what we see is like 11 to 14 feet is like the average for new construction.
yeah.
This Beach Place was built in the past, so they have smaller, so they have like about 10 feet instead of what we see today. Yes, do we have one more table to get to, right? And then if anybody wants to change their answers, then we'll speak up after that. And we can always, write down any amendments to your
Is it
your
code
decisions.
that you have to have 2 floors of parking if you build 4 residential floors?
No, we do have a parking
So in other words, you
standards,
could
though.
build 1 floor of parking and have 5 floors of residence.
It depends on how many units you have.
So that's already stipulated in this no matter what. In other words, that's written in code.
If you have enough land, you might only need 1 floor of parking.
Andrew, can you use the
That's
mic?
kind of the challenge. You have a lot of different scenarios because different things require different amounts of parking. Because hotel rooms it's like 1 per hotel, but then like for a certain, what is it,
For every 5
you need
units,
another.
you need an additional, and then if you have employees, if you have ancillary use,
Yeah,
the
so you
ancillary
Gotcha.
is 50%. Whereas if you have residential
Yeah.
like condo, then it's
Those are our
2.
current codes,
Those
right?
are
Yeah.
our current parking
Right,
standards.
but they can be changed.
Yes.
So what
yes.
is happening, what many cities are contemplating, a few have adopted them, I think Portland and Vancouver, is reduced parking standards,
Yeah.
meaning if you required 1 parking space for 2 living units, now it's only 1 parking space per 5 living units, just as an example. Why? To promote less vehicles. They're typically doing this in densely populated areas, your downtowns, your urban centers where it's densely populated. I don't believe Florida statutes prohibit us or any city in Florida from adopting that. Something to consider. What the requirement would be is, okay, developer, we're allowing you 30 units, but you can only have 6 parking spaces for those 30 units, meaning who are you, how do you market, how do you sell that? You're not going to be able to have a vehicle. So something, just so that that is kind of where it's trending to go to, not so much using your vehicle, particularly if you have the ability to walk to get what you need, or public transit or whatever that might be. But public transit is a little bit of a, here, the trolley works well if you're going north and south on Gulf Boulevard. It works very well. I take it. Of course, I like to walk, but I do take the trolley. But that being said, just something to consider, to not get so hung up on parking. But our code is currently, as was stated, but again, that can change going into the future, which gives some additional options really to developers, not necessarily to go taller or to go denser, but it allows, if we're going to limit the height to 55 feet from what you can see, then maybe they could have 5 floors of living units and only 1 floor of parking. Just something to consider going into the future.
Is the concern more about like rooftop uses and noise? Is that like more of the concern related down there? Or is just parking?
Well, we have one where that is a concern.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I would not ride a bicycle. I personally do not ride a bike on Gulf Boulevard, but that's just me. But I know plenty of people who do.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, one other thing, because right now Forward Pinellas is studying St. Pete Beach and Treasure Island on Gulf
Complete
Boulevard
streets.
specifically to look at vehicular and pedestrian traffic. What could happen in the future, another, is Gulf Boulevard speed is reduced to 30 miles an hour. But I hear from many people, I don't want to drive 30 miles an hour. It's going to take me, however long, depending on where you're going. But things to consider, how to balance cars with pedestrians, and just pedestrians versus vehicles. Pedestrians lose every time.
Yeah, I mean, in this area, it's going to have this standard parking that we require throughout the city, except the only places where in our code that we allow for reduced parking is within Johns Pass Village, like in the actual village part, and then in part of a town center up here near City Hall. Everywhere else, we have the full parking, and including this area would have the two parking spots per unit, and the whatever our parking is for hotels, which
And
requires
ancillary use.
for the but if the concern is to keep it at whatever 6 stories from grade is, whether that's 5 stories over 1 floor of parking or 4 stories over 2 floors, we could write that in the code to make sure it stays at 6 stories from grade, like what currently exists on some of those larger lots down there. But
Andrew,
yeah.
is there such a thing as a multiple use building? In other words, half
mixed
condos,
use.
half rentals? In other words, like a hotel?
There are. I've seen hotels that have mix of permanent residence and temporary
So
lodging.
In other words, there's no code stopping that. So
I
you
mean,
could
basically down
build-
the FAR and the density is really what limits what you can do down there.
So you could get away with 1 floor of parking and do your 5-story building in multiple use, like the top 2 floors condos and the bottom 3 floors as a hotel unit.
Yeah, I mean,
Correct?
I'd have to do the math and see
But
what
that's a possibility.
potentially, yeah, is an option. You could do a condominium down there, or you could do a hotel. So there are different choices. The only thing you can't do on the beach side in that, we're not going to allow for standalone commercial uses down there on the beach. That we made sure to prohibit that, because I know that was a concern. But you can do a single or mixed use if it's like residential or temporary lodging, or potentially a mix if it stays within that FAR and density counts that restrict that.
Okay,
there.
and we have one more table. I just want to move it along so it doesn't go.
Just real quick, I like the height cap more than the floor cap. Also, does this apply just for larger lots, or can That's the only concern. Like if you have a 5 or 6 story cap over parking, and you have a very small lot, you could have a 7-story building on a small building lot,
Yeah, so we can write in standards for if you're less than half an acre, if you're, quarter acre or however wide your lot is. So there's ways to have different standards for smaller lots versus
Sure.
larger lots.
Okay. But I like the capping at the height of the existing, or even just slightly above, rather than the 5 floors over 2 floors of parking.
Doing the stories. And did y'all talk about the height and setbacks of what you thought? Setbacks are fine, how they are, and then height of the current building that's there or the current code? Because there's a little bit of a variation.
Yeah, the story, the average complete level.
Yeah, like somewhere around like the 54 feet range,
50, okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. And did anybody want to change their answer based on stories, adding stories, or everybody's good with?
I wrote it in marker though, I can't.
Oh, no. Okay, and we're going to go to the low intensity mixed use. So this is Pelican. So Pelican is zoned R3, so you will have the same standards that we were just looking at. So same setbacks, same height. It's along the beach. And then an example of an R3 zoning district on one of these lots. Now most of these lots are 40 by 100. Some of them are 80 by 100. Oops. But that's what a 40 by 100 looks like with the setbacks. And then an example from that area of a building that 44 feet. And then some pictures. You do have a mix of development. You have some single-family duplex, triplex, and then you have some of these older beach bungalows that are being rented out, nightly rentals. All right, I will start the timer. Okay. Is everybody about ready? Yes? Is everybody
Hello?
ready? Thank you.
I got it. I got it working. Dankeschön. No.
All right, Mercy.
Oh, God, we're first.
Okay. You ready? Let's
All right, we would
go.
like to leave everything as it is written. It looks fine by us,
All
as in
right.
current height per code.
Perfect.
And the setbacks are just fine.
All right.
We agree too, but there's one exception. There's
Okay.
there's street, guys, there's no sidewalk. There's no sidewalk. There's no sidewalk. So they need a sidewalk on the street side. That's the only thing I'd be concerned about.
That's a good point, Jerry. We were just talking about that. Because here's the problem. Look at that top right picture. Those little bungalow rentals. You can't put a sidewalk in because then they're going to have no place to park, right? So what we were thinking about is what if, just a what if that became a one-way? And then we can widen it and clean that up. It looks like crap behind John's Pass Commercial. This is disgusting. Figure out some type of
Garbage, collective garbage.
collection, something uniform, but that's a different topic. But that could be an interesting one-way.
Yeah.
Because it's dangerous, and you see people walking around at night to all those hotels. It's scary for them. So just a thought. And then you could find a way to put a sidewalk in if you limited that and shifted it a bit. Dumpsters, enclosures.
And
Yes.
Megan has
Don't
a
get Megan going
comment.
back there. She's going to jump on you.
About
Don't
dumpsters,
you worry, I already
bet.
have the microphone.
Dumpster. Ding,
I am actually working with Waste Pro. Marcus, I was going to come talk to you. I'm going to put in power and install compactors down there. This will remove all the dumpsters that are on Pelican that are disgusting. My plan is to install 3 compactors back there, so everybody's going to have to share. And then I will have one over there by Caddy's for that area. So I already have that in the works. Yes. And they will be pretty. They will not be ugly.
Good.
Well, Grace, I have to wait on Duke Energy, so... oh, no, we're talking this year. The power is already there, but I have to install single phase, install pads, and then they go in. So I'm going to say 4 months. It's probably going to be 2 months for Duke Energy. Yes.
Yeah.
And you would say clean up Pelican Lane behind commercial.
Just one point of concern is that if we do keep the code the way it is as written, and all of these little bungalows and everything else, I mean, it could turn into like a concrete wall like that very large single family that's going there. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correct? Okay. Okay. I personally think it's a little too high for the character of that area. I would propose it to be a little lower, at least by 1 story, so around 32 feet.
Yes.
Yes. For the
Yes.
Yes.
The Ford Building Code.
If you use it differently, if you use it differently, then it can be 4 stories. Like if it's
Right.
it has to have like a bathroom or a usable kitchen. There's some caveat in there, but ideally then it's not a single family home. It's built out for something different. So there's some occupation rules around that. Yes. So
Okay.
Anyway, the first floor is parking, which is 16 feet, right? And then 3 stories above that is what I'm seeing all across my block.
but that's being used. That was
So
done.
what's that total height?
Like first floor parking and 3 stories above, I don't have a problem with, but it just seems there's like that 4th story that, is very uncharacteristic of the area that's there now.
Yeah. 32 feet.
Yeah. I would say
Anyway.
the current structures that you're seeing go up, the single-family homes, I don't know if you've seen them. I see them because I got 6 of them right across the street from me.
Yeah.
But I bet you they are near 44 feet total.
Okay.
Because of the first level parking. The parking is high because of the flood.
Yeah, because it's 44 above that first floor of parking, correct?
Now.
Oh,
from
no.
Ground to the top.
Yeah.
It's like-
Yeah, I don't have a problem with 44 totally, but 44 on top of that first floor, because I'm assuming that's what it's,
That's where we measure.
right, that's what I thought.
Exactly.
Yeah. So like a total structure of like 54 or 55 feet or something like that.
From the ground.
Yeah, that's
something
right.
like
Yeah,
that.
right.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
So we have on their lower height something like 32 feet.
That's what I would propose.
Okay. And you're fine with the setbacks? Stable like the setbacks? Okay. So I think everybody was good with the setbacks. All right. I think we got everybody. Any additional comments? Nope. All right. We will move to traditional village. So we're going back to that C1 zoning. This is all commercial. Setbacks in the front are none. This is from the property line. Side is 10 feet on one side. The rear is 25 feet. And then the height from DFE is 34 feet. You just made some examples there of what the height, 34 feet, and then the setbacks. And a lot of those structures in traditional village were built before the current modern zoning code. We were having a hard time finding building plans, trying to see what is the actual height there. So we did find one plan that shows the elevator by the brewery. And so that is 31 feet, 1 3/4 inches from design flood elevation. And as you can see, it looks like the top of that roof might be about the same, might be a little bit more, but about the same. So just to give you an idea of what 34 may look like, that one's 31 feet. And you can see it here in this picture. All right, and I'll give you 10 minutes.
Marcy, for the businesses in that area, they are allowed to have the businesses on the ground floor, correct?
Yes, this can be flood proofed. If it's commercial, you can flood proof the ground floor.
I drink the Karen one. I'm Karen. You're not a Karen. Okay, so then you did miss the episode of Soul Park where there's a Karen where is it Randy? Because it turns into a Karen. It's from the park. Do you know what Gilbert Gottfried is? A couple years ago. It's never, he's a comedian that said it is never too soon. You can make the joke immediately after. You can make a joke about something before it's happened. but you can say something, it's never too soon. That's his rule, and I just did comedian. I mean, I just did stand up. I didn't be a comedian. And that's where, and I follow a lot of comedians. And it's never too soon. Never. No matter what tragedy has occurred. Why? What's the point of respect? Two things that I think are way overblown are respect and shame. Shame, absolutely. Those are two words that do not belong in English language as far as I'm concerned. I think respect is very important. Oh, I don't. I think there should be a baseline. Yeah. Right. So you would just strike that down. No, I would think that's part of it. It's about valuing viewpoints and opinions and treating each other with courtesy. Just make that up. It's good to say the same word in the definition that you're defining. Because it is. It's very important.
Okay, are we ready? You look ready. Yeah? I know this table's ready. Okay, we're going to move right along because I know that we're getting short on time. So does that table want to go first? All right, Jeff.
All right, traditional village, here's our thinking on this one. Because there's no setbacks in between the buildings right now, we think there should be 0 setbacks in that district, because just, there's none there right now. Other things, so we're good with the front being 0, the rear being 25, especially if you can work in sidewalks on that backside there. And then the 34 feet seems normal on that one, with one condition. We believe, and I think everybody believes, that we need a parking garage structure in Johns Pass, and the city owns a big piece of property in Johns Pass. So we would make a recommendation that we like everything to take away the side setbacks, with the exception that if there were to be a parking garage built there, it should be maxed out at 6 floors, or no higher than the Hubbard's parking garage that's there right now, from a character perspective, and then give the city that flexibility, because if you keep 34 feet there, just only, the exception would be only for a parking garage in there. So that's what we would suggest there.
And then we are
With the design standards,
guidelines.
to make sure that it has the design guidelines, so it looks nice. Because they wrapped that nice one, the Hubbard's, by the Hubbard's one, that doesn't even look like a parking garage with the retail stores around the side of it. So that's what we think on that.
Camouflaged, and, yeah. Perfect. All right.
All right, we were good with everything. The 10-foot setback on one side for a sidewalk, I mean, that's there now, it looks like. No?
So a lot of these properties, let me see if I can show you. So some of these properties are combined, like this is 120 by 100, but then you have like your 40 by 100, 40 by 100, and those are all contiguous. There's no setbacks. So maybe like a 10-foot on
One end.
the corner lots.
That's what we're
something
referring
like
to.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
On contiguous structures, it makes no sense to have setbacks in
Yeah.
between. None at all.
But if it's a corner lot, then having 10 on the side, on one side.
If a sidewalk is needed, or maybe a little bit of green
Yeah,
space.
absolutely.
And then we were talking about the parking garage a little bit. We were like, no more than 4 stories, because now we're over towering the village, and it's going to look totally out of place. Although, yeah, but even that looks out of place to us. It really does. I know we're losing money with losing, but
So you
it's-
think something
it would
like 40
you'd
feet
have
or
this like
something?
monster
Yeah,
looking down at the traditional village, and I don't think anybody would want that. I mean, it's tough to envision what it would look like sitting here,
Yeah.
but that's just our opinion on that. Then I mean, it was brought up that, yeah,
4 stories. Okay.
yeah,
4 stories just for the garage, right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
And what are the best? The best. I've been tried to do this here for many years. I mean, I brought up many years ago this garage, but all the time I turn around, they keep on renting the space there to the T-shirt people. So I never can make it up. It don't make a sense to have a T-shirt shop. I know we make money there, but the reality is, if they spend $3.5 million to build this garage, four-story, I agree, a 4-story with the one on the ground, it's be 5 floor parking now you got, don't forget. 7 to 8 years you pay the parking for the rate they go right now on Madeira Beach. Believe me, at $3.50 an hour, or you make a deal to the shops there and get things together to pay $22.5 to $30 a week, $120 a month for the people that work on the Madeira Beach there on the village. Give them a deal. It's $120. You never had it. You just give them a deal, but then you got something close to the village. Put shops on the bottom, like across the street. It's more income for the village, for the city. The whole city benefit there. Not just village, the whole city. So why not have a nice 4-story, decorate nice, just like the Hubbard. I don't see nothing wrong with that. Or if we can come up with a restaurant on top and go one more story and decorate with the trees and flowers and balcony, it's a plus for the village. Okay? Next.
the rear setbacks, we think should not be more than 10 feet. Specifically at the VFW, they will lose property, buildable property if that happens at 25.
And height, anything for that?
Height? The height is 34 feet. Is that what it was listed? 34 feet
Yeah,
is fine.
34. And all the other setbacks? Front and side. Sides?
Side 10, is that right?
Except for the end properties.
Okay. All right.
He mentioned the VFW is that mean that they're non-compliant right now?
It sounds like they would be legally non-conforming.
Well, I didn't have that information. And if that's the case, I would agree to decrease that setback as well.
At rear setback?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So, other than that, we
Decrease
were
that
okay
rear
with
to
the,
10.
sorry. So, but other than that, we're okay with the setbacks. With regards to the height, we're okay leaving the strip of businesses at 34, but in the event that, because we had the parking discussion, that a parking lot is built, we don't want to restrict that. We put a number on it, though. We said 44 feet.
44. Okay. Only for garage.
Only for a garage in the triangle there.
Okay.
What? Yeah. Oh, sorry. We
10 on the
just we
corner.
like the I should have specified that the 10-foot one side on the street ends
Okay.
only. We're not cutting a hole.
But not on the,
Yeah, not cutting through it, right?
yeah. Yeah,
Where there's none.
that makes sense.
I don't want to speak because we didn't discuss that. I personally think that's okay. I don't know if anybody else.
Is-
To cover it.
For like outdoor, yeah.
What do you think about that, Nancy? Yeah, thanks. I think I said everything. Yep, thanks.
Yeah, just real quick, we're good with the 34, the 0 in between, 10 on the sides, and then I'm okay with reducing the 25 rear to 10.
To 10.
And so it would be just 10 on the front, 10 on the back.
Okay.
Or actually 0 on the front, 10 on the back. Thank you.
Great. I think that was everyone. Okay. I think this is the last one. So we're going to go to transitional. So this one can be a little tricky. We have a lot of different zoning districts going on. So on the beach side is all R3 zoning. You saw that earlier in John's Pass Resort, and then Pelican, that was the same zoning. And then on the east side, we have a mix of C4 zoning, C3 zoning. Those look very similar. The front is 25, side is at a minimum 10 feet. And then if you have a wider lot, then it's up to 33% of the width. The rear, if you're C4 zoning, it's 18 feet. And this is determined by the water side of the seawall. If you're C3 zoning, it's 10 feet. And then in the C3 zoning, it depends on your use on how high you can go. So it's either 34 feet, or if you're doing multifamily or hotel, it's 44 feet, where C4 zoning is just 34 feet. And then we do have a small little sliver up here that was R2 zoning. And those setbacks are front is 20 feet, side is 12 feet, and then rear is 25 feet, and height is 40 feet. There's just an example of that C3 and C4 zoning. They look very similar, but here you can see the C3. So you potentially, based on the use, you could get a little higher, so 44 feet, but they look very similar. And typically we'll see either mixed use or something that could be flood-proof the ground floor. So maybe you would have parking on the ground floor, or maybe that would be flood-proof, or you might have a mix of that. And then an example of R3, so this is Beachside, Gulf Boulevard, and then R2, those look very similar as well. And then we do have in the R3 zoning district there, we do have smaller lots and we have larger lots, so keep that in mind as well. That we do have some single family duplex, triplex, so making sure that there's something written in the zoning to protect those. And then an example, we do have a few PDs, or just one PD, which is Barefoot Beach, so they were allowed to exceed that height through that PD process. So they are 63 feet and 7 inches above DFE. And then across the street over here, we have Madeira Bay, and they're maybe a little bit taller, but about the same. And they received a variance. Now, we don't allow variances for height anymore. So they also were allowed to exceed the height. And I think the only building that we are aware of is at the All Seasons Resort, which I believe is about like 50 feet above DFE. And that was allowed with the previous zoning before the 80s, where they measured from the grade upward. So we have a few taller buildings, but in this district, we really have a mix of single-family duplex, triplexes, hotel, and condos. So just keep that in mind when you go through the height and setbacks and then any other special requirements. All right, and I know we just hit 3 o'clock, but I'm going to give 10 minutes, and this is the last one. All right. Okay, I'm back. All right, so we are ready. Y'all want to start over here?
Just in our discussion, it appears that the current setbacks are okay. The height, I mean, if there's existing structures, they're now at 68 feet. You know, I'm okay with the 44 feet, but, you know, there may be something to rectify that. Maybe an extra 10 feet increase would be okay considering. But I don't have much more of a feedback on
Okay.
this area.
44, yeah. I would say like protection of, yeah, existing. All right, next table.
Batter up. We're okay with everything that's written there. We would like to keep everything with the current code,
All right,
especially the heights.
perfect.
Okay.
We agree, as the code's great. We don't see any problems with
It
that.
works, okay.
It works.
So don't mess it up.
We
That
agree
too.
with the current code as it is. However, there are 3 non-conforming buildings. And in the non-conforming section of the code, something needs to be written there that would protect those 3 properties. If Madeira Beach Resort is 68 feet, that's a new building. Say 30, 40 years from now, they have to rebuild. They should not have to make it smaller. They should be able to build it back to where it's at. So something needs to be in the non-conforming code that protects those 3 buildings that specifically are hit in this area.
All right, and last table.
Is it okay? Okay. The setbacks retain current, but with specific regards, take a look at landscaping and design element requirements on that side with especially with the multi-use on that Gulf side, making sure that we are paying attention and requiring some sort of landscaping and design elements. With regard to the height, we're fine with 44 feet.
All right. I think that was it. Okay, thank you. So next steps are, we do have a BOC workshop next Wednesday. We'll be kind of discussing this, but we probably won't have time to gather all the information from all of our 3 meetings for that next Wednesday meeting. So from here, it'll go to BOC workshop. It'll also go to Planning Commission as discussion, and you'll see it every month at BOC workshops and Planning Commission as discussion items. We may have some more public workshops. It really just depends on input from BOC and where we go from there. But then there will be eventually official public hearings on these. So there will be mailers going out. It'll also be in the newspaper as ads. So you will hear it. This isn't just the last that you'll ever hear of this. So.
Real quick question. What got you guys here the best? Was it the flyers or the cards, the mailer cards? What got you notified about this meeting and got you here the best?
Perfect. There's plenty of food left back here, so grab some on your way out. There's pizza, there's fruit, there's cookies.
Thank you.
Take some food with
We
you.
really appreciate everyone coming out and your input. This has been great.